Hey, it's Katie Moran. Here's your heartfelt lift. Today I'm here with.
Sophie Delfeus. I am the CEO and founder of Cultivating the Collective. We are a immersive experience company working to combat loneliness and build community wherever we are.
Which is so needed. So, something that I have gotten from you that is beyond powerful and transformative is this idea that we don't need self-improvement, only presence.
Thank you for that. It's so funny because ever since I was young, I was always that person like looking to put myself in these new situations. I was
Mm,
constantly looking for a challenge, and part of it was naturally, I've always been a big learner. I also knew that the more challenges I had, that broadened my experience. But
mm,
as I've really taken to my own healing journey, and starting therapy about 8 years ago, I
mm,
started to really sit with the truth I wasn't telling myself. And at that
mm,
time, it actually looked like self improvement, personal growth, kind of being a way that I was trying to temper this idea that I wasn't enough. So I wanted to put a
mm,
band-aid on it. So
mm,
there was kind of this way that
mm,
I was tracing these opportunities, like I would be hyper efficient or trying to figure out what that next skill was. And even when it came to, more interpersonal skills or goals, it was always from this perspective of I'm doing this wrong and I want to do it right.
mm,
And as I was sitting with my therapist, for example, who would reflect back to me when we'd be talking about concepts around self improvement, but her
mm,
response was, "But how are you feeling?" Or, "I want to like take a pause because I'm actually looking at this from a different perspective." And 9 times out of 10, no, 10 times out of 10, it was a perspective that was compassionate, that was kind, that was
mm,
curious. And for me and my body, it was kind of like
mm,
I came before her with this like report of what I did wrong and how I'm like trying to fix it as if she was a parent, right? That I was like
mm,
trying to avoid a punishment.
mm,
And I think that really those sessions gave me permission to start talking to myself better
mm,
and recognizing that a lot of maybe the faults that I saw in myself in external situations, what I really needed to turn into was what was the dialogue I was having with myself?
mm. Yeah, I think that brings up something that's really not talked about in the self-development community, but this idea that there's constant striving and that it comes from a place of not being good enough as you are. And I really believe in self-improvement, self-development as ideas and
Mm,
not as a pursuit, and letting these ideas become a part of who you are, and specifically how you reframe how you see yourself in the world and how you see the world in yourself. And that it is something that is fluid and dynamic, and that we can learn from each other, especially in community, because I know you are such a big advocate for community. I want to hear about the role of presence in community and how it benefits the collective.
yes, absolutely. Katie, hearing that amazing description just now, it really kind of, I think, helps capture the kind of my perspective these days when I think about my
Mhm,
healing journey and really
mhm,
being one of seasons, right? I
mhm,
think moving away from this, you're not enough, from moving away, and there's so many little ways that kind of that belief kind of infiltrates our behaviors and our mannerisms.
mhm,
But I think once we start to like recognize more so that 10 times out of 10, we are doing an amazing job and just sheerly like naming that as
Mhm.
often as possible. That has
Mhm.
kind of been the way that I have been able to change the relationship that I had with self improvement.
Mhm.
And what I found is what that looks like, along with some of these conversations. I talk about the seasons I'm going through, and kind of the same way, right? Like we think about summer, we think about spring, we think about winter, and
Mhm.
there's so much to observe, right? Like the
Mhm.
changing of the leaves, whether there's snow on the ground, the first bloom in the flowers,
Mhm.
maybe what are the insects or birds that are around this time of year. It's really about witnessing and like being present to where we are in this moment. So I think it starts with this self commitment, not, of course, recognizing that we can make mistakes, we can fall off the bike, and we just get up and get back on. But there's this way we are present to the season we're in.
Mhm.
And I find that being in community, and it's how it I think it's the people that make you feel good, the people that make you feel comfortable, the people
Mhm.
that help you feel like it's safe to express yourself and
Mhm.
maybe even talk out what you're moving through, not because they give the best advice. I no longer necessarily need to find folks that give the best advice, because that was prioritizing where they are or their view of what's happening before my own,
Mhm.
and more
Mhm.
so finding folks that really created this safe space, and one that often was filled with listening,
Mhm.
way more than as much as they're sharing their opinion about my situation.
Mhm.
But I found that being present to my own experience and being in the presence of community that really promoted curiosity in my own journey, that has been life changing.
Yeah, something that you get at there is this idea that self-improvement is healing in action, and that it is an internal change. And just like we go through seasons, like we have to exist in ourselves for there to be a change. And this idea that when we are present, that is the only way that we can be impacted and moved, and that we can only heal in action if we are there and if we are open to it. And I love that so much, because I think a lot of self improvement has this idea that, you point your finger at the people who aren't doing it right, and that there's a right way to do it. And I think something that's so powerful is that when we change ourselves and when people see how we heal, that's the only way we can influence them. And that it actually isn't from like the outsider perspective and the perspective of your friends. It's not giving advice. It's being so moved by someone's transformation that you can't help but be transformed yourself.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I think it's so much more fun to even like witness. Oh, I remember when, my friend Urani would come around and she'd talk about this way. But now I actually have witnessed that this doesn't actually get under her skin the same way. I see her asking different questions.
Mm,
And also, there's ways where she tells herself the truth. I didn't have to say anything, you know?
mhm,
And that is, I think it's a privilege to be
mhm,
able to, and I recognize that my friends, my community around me, actually were aware of that privilege and held it with high regard before I even recognized that I had that same opportunity to
mhm,
do so in their lives.
mhm. Thank you so much for bringing up this idea that really the presence is a gift not only to us, but to every life we touch. I want to thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.